In Activity 9, River Sediment, students apply what they have learned about erosion and deposition. They first compare and contrast several samples of river sediment, and then examine a map of a hypothetical river. Finally, students identify on the map probable sites of sample extraction. You will need the following materials from the kit: Activity Sheet 2, Activity Sheet 4, Activity Sheet 9, Parts A and B, gravel, labels, magnifiers, sand, clay soil, potting soil, plastic tubes, caps for tubes, and tubes of earth materials from Activity 4. You will also need to provide small pebbles and tap water. To prepare for the activity, make a copy of Activity Sheet 9, Parts A and B for each student. Students will also need their previously completed Activity Sheets 2 and 4. Collect about 2 cups of small pebbles. Prepare a set of 4 sediment samples for each team in the following proportions. Fill Tube A with 1½ inches potting soil, ½ inch of sand, and 0.2 inches clay soil. Fill Tube B with 1½ inches clay soil, ½ inch of potting soil, and 0.2 inches of sand. Fill Tube C with 1½ inches pebbles, ½ inch of gravel, and 0.2 inches of sand. Fill Tube D with 1½ inches of sand, ½ inch of gravel, and 0.2 inches of potting soil. Fill the remaining space in all tubes with tap water and place a cap on each tube. To begin the activity, initiate a discussion by asking, what factors determine the content of the sediment found at different locations along a riverbed? Encourage responses that include the type of material that was eroded upstream, the amount of water in the stream, the speed of the water due to the slope of the land, and the shape of the riverbed where the samples are taken. Then, have each student retrieve his or her copy of Activity Sheet 2. Review the erosion landforms and how they affect the speed of the water and the deposition of sediment. Explain that deep, fast-moving water loses energy as it enters wide, shallow areas, causing deposition of all but the smallest particles. When water enters its base level, nearly all energy is absorbed by the larger body of water, and nearly all sediment is released and settles out. Have each student retrieve his or her copy of Activity Sheet 4. Review the settling characteristics of the different types of earth material. Remind students of the importance of particle size and weight in deposition. For example, flowing water needs much more force to retain gravel than to retain either sand or soil. Have the 4 tubes of earth materials from Activity 4 available for students who wish to re-examine their settling characteristics. Hand out a copy of Activity Sheet 9, Parts A and B to each student. Next, distribute the tubes of river sediment to the teams, 1 tube per team of 2. Tell the students that these tubes represent samples of riverbed sediment taken from different places along the river shown on Activity Sheet 9, Part B. Have them examine the contents of their tube and record their observations on Activity Sheet 9, Part A. Students may shake the samples but should not remove the caps. Have magnifiers available for students who wish to examine the tube contents more closely. Then have teams swap tubes until each team has examined tubes A through D. After each team has listed the contents of the 4 tubes on their activity sheets, have the students assign each tube to the location on Activity Sheet 9, Part B, where the sample was most likely taken. Guide students to record their answers at the bottom of Part A. Finally, after students have assigned locations to the tubes, discuss their results. Hold up tubes A through D one at a time and ask, why do you think this sediment sample was taken from the area you chose? Based on what they learned in Activity 4, students should be able to infer that the heavier particles settled out first, while the lighter ones were carried farther down the river, even as the speed of the river was steadily decreasing. Then ask students which river material was less easily eroded than potting soil, yet carried farther downstream once suspended in water. Why? Students should have observed the clay soil moved farther downstream. Explain that clay particles are smaller than potting soil particles and so are carried farther downstream by running water. However, because they are sticky, they hold together once deposited and are not as easily eroded as the larger but less sticky particles of potting soil. To conclude the activity, drain the water from all 20 tubes, then discard the sediment samples outdoors. Rinse and air dry the tubes and caps, and return them along with the magnifiers and what's left of the open bags of earth materials to the kit. For science background, reinforcement activities, curriculum connections, and information about the Delta Science Reader, please consult your DSM Teacher's Guide.